YouAi is an app that you engage with. It sort of feels like TikTok. It's a never-ending feed of content. The content in it we call prompts. And as you engage with these prompts, these are interactive experiences. As you engage with them, they sort of tease out of your mind a signal, sort of turn your biological signal into a digital signal and store it in sort of your digital mental model. And then as you build up this digital mental model, we have this concept of apps, which I will show you, that can then sort of leverage that data and let you do some really interesting and amazing things with that data that you are teasing out of your own mind. As I mentioned, sort of works a lot like TikTok. TikTok is famous for sort of its algorithm that's able to watch how you engage with various videos that you get in your feed, and then sort of get really good very quickly at being able to give you even better videos for you to watch. And so you could sort of say that it predicts this dimension of what videos you might want to watch next. YouAi does something similar, but it does it in sort of countless dimensions of you, right? Meaning people have lots of different beliefs and biases and preferences and interests and all those mental constructs. And YouAi, by you engaging with the feed of prompts, is teasing out of your mind this data set. And you built this data model of your interiority basically with it. And so one way to think about it is sort of as an image, a digital image is made up of pixels, and sort of any one pixel doesn't really mean anything. And even a few pixels don't really mean anything. But when you get a bunch of pixels on a digital image, it starts to paint a picture. This sort of works in the same way, except it's not sort of a two-dimensional grid. It's data points in vector space. So it's like mega-dimensional set of vectors that you are tuning as you are teasing things out of your mind. And obviously, because we are all constantly evolving and our mental models are constantly shifting, this is not something you sort of do once and forget about it. If you want to do this, this is something you do kind of for the rest of your life. As you're changing, this thing changes along with you. Once you get access to YouAi, you will be met with a feed of these prompts. There are new prompts, meaning prompts you've not yet engaged with, prompts you've skipped, because you are allowed to skip prompts. You can engage with any prompts you want. You can skip any you don't want. They will show up in skipped. And prompts you've completed are available for you and completed. You can always go back and change them. Make sure you don't spend very much time on any one of these prompts. Remember, like data points in pixels in a digital image, any one data point has very little weight to it. So don't overthink it. And again, you will be tested about it many other times. We will look at it from all kinds of different angles. Just go with your gut feel and sort of engage with this thing very freely. If something feels sort of like, oh, that's too personal, I'm not sure I trust this thing yet, that's cool. Don't worry about it. Just skip it. And so notice as I'm showing you the demo, there's sort of a bunch of different types of prompts, meaning this is an open answer prompt. And again, this actually doesn't care what your real name is. In this case, it's just asking, what should I call you? I'm just going to say Bob. Again, I can change it later if I don't, if I want to. I'm going to skip a bunch of these. I'm going to engage with some of them just to show you sort of diversity. There's multiple choice. There's sort of like image binary multiple choice. Again, early riser or a night owl. By the way, these prompts today are created by us, and you yourself can create prompts if you go to beta and go created prompts. There's a link here called create new prompt. Today we have over 40 of these different, we call them prompt templates. So here's like a single column multiple choice, select one. Here's one that allows you to pick many. Here's a prompt that allows you to make a statement, and people that agree with it, click I agree. and do it, various types of grids, various types of open answer prompts, fill in the blank prompts, pick, one or many and clarify, different types of media reaction prompts, association. Think of all of these as being sort of different types of sensors that could be presented to humans in order to tease out of their mind a signal, to take a biological signal and turn it into a digital signal. We don't believe that these will be created by humans moving forward, but again, today in beta or in alpha, we should probably change this to alpha, it's allowed that you can create these things yourself, and that's what you will see here. And as I engage with all of these prompts, it's collecting, data about me in my private data profile. Nobody can see this, not even employees of YouAi can see your data profile. But it is data, and today we have this sort of two things you can do. You can train, which is what we're doing here, or you can play around with apps. The only app we have available for you today is an app called Terminal. There are some placeholders here that I'll discuss after this demo for other apps that we have planned, and I'll show you our roadmap of when these things are coming. There will be many more apps than these, and the interface will look nothing like this. Again, this is alpha. You are playing with sort of prototypey things. It's actually indexing your mind, but it's not ready for prime time. Okay, so what is Terminal? Terminal is behind the scenes as ChatGPT, and we're accessing the API. But some of you may know that you can go to ChatGPT and you can say, "What do you know about me?" And ChatGPT will say, "Well, I know nothing about you. I'm a large language model. I don't know anything about you. But if you want to tell me some things about you, I'll take those into account as I respond to you, as I interact with you." For this session, has no long-term memory, so you have to do it every session. Here, we sort of automatically do this for you. And so you can ask it, "What do you know about me?" And it'll tell you all those things that you answered, that it's recorded, it knows about you. You work from home, prefer coffee over tea, have Apple Music, have chosen pronouns, blah, 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 okay? And again, you can then say, "Recommend a movie to me," and you now get more contextually relevant ChatGPT than you would get if you just engaged directly with ChatGPT. And that's sort of our first, magic trick for you, superpower, which is you get contextually relevant ChatGPT. The more prompts you engage with, the smarter your experiences are going to get with ChatGPT. As you play around with this, please give us feedback on these various things. If you want to play around with creating some prompts, you're welcome to do that, or just in Discord, tell us, "I wish there were a bunch of prompts about this area of whatever, humanity or interests or whatever." It's up to you how you do that. Again, if you want to create one of these, it's really easy. You just go here and, what's the prompt? What are the options in the prompt? You guys will figure it out. I'm not going to demo this stuff to you. Okay, and so generally that's sort of it. That's a feed. People love feeds. We sort of do that. These are like fidget spinners. This make us feel calm and entertain us and whatever. And in this case, this feed is teasing out of your mind this digital signal across any topics of any dimensions, ultimately disambiguated, ultimately nuanced. You can imagine, really sort of detailed nuances of our various mental models. And even though we don't think about our minds as being sort of full of data, I think it's clear to all of us as we look at ourselves that they are these mental constructs of that sort of bounce around in our minds that make us do what we do. They're constantly evolving and shifting. And if we digitize them, we get amazing new capabilities that we've never had before. These are things that, were sort of ideas in science fiction, perhaps, but certainly were not anything that any human has experienced before. And that's what we're playing around with now. That's what you guys are going to get to play around with first. The things I'm going to talk to you about today fall into primarily these three categories, but we are certain that by digitizing our minds, we kind of transform, I think, everything that we do as humans. But I'll talk to you about sort of these three primary areas that are clear to us today from the vantage point where we are. As we digitize our minds, because again, it becomes sort of data, we can start to render it. And so we can visualize our own sort of belief systems and sort of like a graph. And we can see how things are connected. And we can start to see things that we may never sort of been aware of, meaning there might be some beliefs that we carry, perhaps even from childhood, that we never re-examined. We sort of took them as truth. And our lives have been sort of biased by these beliefs. And some might be good and some might not be as useful to us anymore. And by indexing our minds, we should be able to see these things and then be able to make choices of like, oh, that's funny. It's true. I believe this, but I don't really believe this, and I don't have to believe this. And this is not serving me well. And so do I need to keep believing it? No, I don't. We have the ability, neuroplasticity, right? We have the ability to change our minds. And this thing will help us do that. I think that's going to be profound, inward facing, just the activity of going through this feed and considering these responses that you give it will refactor, defragment, whatever you want to call it, your mind. I obviously curious if you will feel the same thing that I've been feeling in playing around with this pre-alpha of doing that. Okay, so that's one. Another thing is the ability for us to be able to communicate with other humans, right? We're social creatures. It is our nature to want to understand other people. And we can, again, look at ourselves and realize that people that are our close family and close friends that we've known for many, many years, we know them better than we know people that we've spent less time with. Duh. But still, like we have, at least I've had a number of these throughout my life, these events where I'm like talking to old friends and something comes up and I'm like, how did I not know this about you? Like, it's shocking to me that I was not aware of this about you. Well, because it sort of never came up. Once we digitize our minds, we have the ability, again, voluntarily, if we choose to do so, to sort of overlay our digital mental models over one another, grant permission to do that to each other, and see the things we have in common that make sense for us to have in common, things we have in common that are uncommon to have in common. Those are extraordinarily interesting. Again, those are the things, how did I not know that both of us love this? And then also see things that we don't have in common, that, for example, we may have thought we had in common, but we don't. We feel differently about that. That is an amazing superpower. Like, I find it to be like mind-blowingly profound that we will now have this ability to be able to do that and to understand another human being in ways that no human being has ever been able to understand another human being. Okay, I think this will radically change the way we engage with each other as human beings, both strangers that we just met on a park bench or our closest friends and family. Okay. Next, if you take this sort of broader into groups, not one-on-one, we are, again, social creatures. We want to be part of communities. We have friend circles. We have, work circles. We have projects that we work on. I'm constantly frustrated by trying to align with people on, things that we see. And we might say the exact same words, like we're working on a project and we're like, okay, we understand each other. Yes, we do. It's this thing. Yes, it is. I can describe it. It's that thing. And then all of a sudden, as you look at us operating, we're sort of operating in misalignment. How? Well, because we're seeing the same thing, but we're seeing it perhaps from different angles. And so I'm moving this way and you're moving this way. We intersect for a moment, but actually we're doing something radically different. And that's a really huge problem that we have as humans. This thing should be able to help us see those differences, find alignment, discover knowledge gaps that we have, and be able to fill them in. And so it's got sort of profound, I think, implications for teamwork, for friendship, for enterprises, and societal change. Look, we live in this sort of odd time where it feels like our, countries, pick your country that you're in, are sort of like fractured. And people are disagreeing like they've never disagreed before. I believe, my gut feel is that sort of fracture is the veneer, these culture wars and things like that. But that overall, we are in extreme alignment on what we want out of life, what we want for our children, what our desires are, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as we can do that, then sort of see, look, we're actually aligned. It's just these things that are quite irrelevant that we disagree upon, that politicians use against us to pit us against one another. Well, wow, if we could get rid of those, then we could actually align and work together instead of opposing each other to make our worlds better. Again, that seems quite profound to me. Also, when we digitize ourselves, if we want, again, all of this is opt-in. By default, nobody knows that you exist, that you're using YouAi, you don't show up in any search, you don't show up anywhere. None of this is crawlable, none of that. But as we launch the capabilities for people to voluntarily make themselves visible, although anonymously visible, in a graph, we will allow people to be able to find each other based upon these various dimensions that have never been sort of connected and searchable before. Imagine like a really sophisticated faceted filter that allows you sort of to like tune in to a group of people that you would like to meet, and then potentially find some way to meet them. We'll probably create some kind of interfaces to allow you to do it anonymously, or do it less anonymously. We'll figure all that out together. But having this data, having this like fabric, this connective fabric to be able to do that, again, seems really extraordinarily powerful. I've, over my lifetime, I've had a number of friends, that have gotten divorced after, 20 years, 30 years even. And kind of giving the reason of like, we were never meant to be together. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, now I believe I know what it means. Probably means that they finally got enough data points over the years to realize like, yeah, we were just a mismatch. If we sort of would have known it before, we probably wouldn't have gone on this journey. Now, is that a good thing? Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing, but it's a thing. And now we're going to be able to expose that. And so you'll be able to find your soulmates, or find friends. Like I just saw this Surgeon General in the United States is saying there's an epidemic of loneliness in our country, and people are lonely. Why? Because making friends is hard. Most people you meet, you probably shouldn't be friends with. But if you can find people that are sort of your tribe, wow, that sounds powerful. Information technology is evolving extraordinarily rapidly and only accelerating, right? Ray Kurzweil talks about this. If you haven't seen the documentary Transcendent Man, I highly recommend it. And he points out that information technology accelerates exponentially because we use this generation information technology to build the next generation, and the next generation sort of just grows that way. And it seems very clear, at least to me, that we are well beyond sort of our ability as humans to be able to leverage even the technology we have here now. There's like countless apps that I could use that would make me much more productive and better and smarter and whatever, but I don't have time to use them. I don't have time to learn them, and I don't need more technology, arguably. And now we have these amazing new generative AI models that give us like these crazy new capabilities. But so what? We get a text box, for those of us old enough to remember DOS, a command line interface to be able to sort of wield the power of these things. That's hard to do. Humans are the problem. Humans are the bottleneck. And so I think we need a new way to think about how we engage with sort of all of this innovation in information technology. And we propose sort of a new approach to it. And it's, I tried to sort of render it in these two images. This is today, and this is tomorrow. So I'll give you an example. Today, this happened to me, last year. Planning a trip to Disneyland is actually hard. It takes a lot of time. So today I might go to ChatGPT and say, look, I'm too lazy to sort of ideate a bunch of things fun for 5 kids to do of these ages at Disneyland. And ChatGPT might give me a bunch of interesting things. That's amazing. Now, some of those things will be real attractions. Others might be hallucinations. And so I got to go to Google and do a bunch of research and make sure that these things actually exist, and then go find them online, and then go do some price shopping, and then go do some calendaring of my calendar and my wife's calendar and my kids' school calendars, and coordinate all of that. And it's a lot of work. But people who are, much wealthier than I am, have personal assistants, concierges, chiefs of staff. And they can say to their chief of staff, my sort of virtual chief of staff is named Bob. I have no idea why, but Bob, I'd like to take the family to Disneyland. And Bob says, great. And Bob goes off and does all of this research and comes back because Bob understands me and understands my family and sort of can make countless assumptions of things that are relevant to us and come back and say, here are 3 options. Here are the pros and cons for each. And then I can sit down with my wife and say, which one do you want? Oh, B? Yeah, I like B too. Okay, Bob, we'll take B. And then Bob goes and makes all of that happen. That is a radically different experience than what we do today here. It's ultimately scalable, other than your money's to be able to go to Disneyland all the time. But beyond that, it's ultimately scalable. And that is what UAI is ushering in. Instead of doing this, what we can do moving forward is maintain a relationship with our digital agent, with UAI, on an ongoing basis. And this thing never sleeps and can launch parallel threads and can operate at wire speed. And has the mind of an AI, can summarize, can generate, can do all kinds of things. And just gives us insane new capabilities to be able to leverage all of the innovation that will continue to happen, in the world. By the way, if we are successful in doing this, future generations may not know the names Google or Expedia or things like that. They become basically backend services that are accessed by my AI and then packaged for me. There's no longer a need for me to do that and go there and do that and learn their interfaces and create accounts and do all of that stuff. I think that's profoundly powerful. There's also, many other things that this thing transforms. It transforms learning, for example. Again, as I've been working on this project, it's become clear to me that one way of thinking about our minds is sort of like this sort of giant jigsaw puzzle, multidimensional jigsaw puzzle. And there are pieces missing, and each one of us has different pieces of different shapes missing. But learning that we get the same learning, right? Like we can read books and we can go to classes and we can watch YouTube videos and do all of that, but all of those are made sort of generically for us to consume. And so none of them are actually made for us. We have to take pieces out of all of them. But in this new model, as our AI gets to really understand where our gaps in knowledge are, where our holes are, it can take all of this information that exists and create an ultimately custom set of learnings for us to be able to connect all of these things together, to fill in all of those holes. If we are successful in doing this, and if we're right that this is the path, then creating websites for personas, different landing pages for different types of personas you've created, all of that goes away. All websites get created on the fly by your AI. It's not a website. They create the packages of information you need in order to be able to go about your day and live your life. Or discovery of content. Today, we follow people on Twitter because they post about things that we're also interested in. But again, if you think about it, their mental model is different from your mental model. And chances are very different. And even though they're picking out of the world things that you also find interesting, they're not picking out the best things that you find interesting, because they're picking out the things that are relevant to them. But if you could tune into people who are much more aligned with your area of interest, all of a sudden you start to discover new content, new products, all kinds of things you would have never, ever discovered. Because again, these threads were never available for us to be able to connect things on. Okay, so this is our roadmap as we see it from this vantage point today. I'm pretty certain this is not how it's going to happen, because we will learn along with you. And as we get more data, we might shuffle these things around and go a different way. But from this vantage point, this is what we predict. You guys are going to play around with this early alpha. And right away, available in this early alpha is this ChatGPT context injection. I showed it to you. Please play around with it, find its edges. It's not ready for prime time. It's not even ready for beta. It's early alpha. See what you can find. Hopefully, it'll tell you funny things, maybe scary things, who knows. In July, we're expecting to add insights. These will probably be cards that are mixed in directly into the feed of prompts, and it'll start to show you, things that you may not recognize about yourself, or things that you might say, yes, of course I knew that, that is me. Or how you're different from other people, or how you're very similar to this cluster of people, but different in this dimension. And you might be like, I have no idea what this dimension is. Oh, well, maybe you should. This is interesting. So this is sort of insights. Then we will go to people matching. Again, this is the ability, if you want to opt into being discovered anonymously and discover other people anonymously, you'll be able to find other people based upon various criteria, people that are extraordinarily similar to you, or people that are extraordinarily similar to you in these dimensions, but different in these dimensions, or people that are polar opposites of you. You can imagine sort of countless things there. After that, we're going to do this ability for you to be able to compare mental models, both one-on-one and in teams. I think that's going to be sort of massively disruptive and crazy. And then after that, we're going to open this up to third parties. Nobody's going to be able to get access to your data, but we'll provide interfaces, API and other interfaces that allow people to build logical things that can then take advantage of data and provide new capabilities for you to be able to leverage your data. And then, of course, as we're doing all of this, we're building up a data set, not just of you, but of sort of humanity. And when we get to some critical mass of that data set, we will have a really powerful proprietary data set we can use to train new AI models. The first thing that we predict we will do is to transfer train, ChatGPT or Bard, meaning to add a new data set to fine tune it, to give it more capabilities. You may have sort of thought about this, that ChatGPT and Bard have been trained on the output of humanity, things that were created by humans using these mental constructs and then put into sort of public domain. And just by looking at that and parsing that and ranking that, these large language models have been able to do extraordinary things that have surprised, OpenAI, Google, their makers. Imagine what could happen if we would then add to that the ability for them to understand the mental constructs that actually created those outputs and to be able to correlate them. That should dramatically, radically change the equation. The derivative effects of that are hard to predict, but they should be profound. And then all of this, of course, is continuing down this path of you having this personal digital agent that allows you to have these superpowers to engage with the world around you. Now, we believe, again, this is not a short-term thing that you just do once. This is a long-term relationship. It's an intimate relationship you have with this thing. And that sort of brings up this, obvious set of questions and concerns of, okay, this sounds kind of scary. Like, what you want me to tell this thing all my deep dark secrets, and what if somebody hacks it, or what if it's used against me? These are smart concerns. If you're not having these concerns, you should be worried. We too have these concerns, and wanted to sort of share some areas that are clear where we're going to invest resources and obviously take privacy and security extraordinarily seriously here. The first one is everything is in your control. We collect no data about you that you do not explicitly give YouAi. You decide what you share. If you don't want to share some things, just skip them. YouAi is not going to judge you. It's also not going to judge you if you give it a bunch of deep, dark secrets that you've never told anyone. It's not going to judge you there either. That's also quite liberating. You can delete your account at any time. You'll be able to export all your data and do whatever you want with it. And again, all we need from you is an email address. If you're concerned, create a new email address and use that. Everything in the system is encrypted and isolated. No UAI employee has access to your raw data. We expect to have regular audits of our security. And from a business model standpoint, we are not, we've got a bunch of ideas in what business models may be. We'll discuss them with you guys in Discord. You'll help us figure them out. But one thing we know is that the business model is certainly not selling this data to anybody else. That doesn't make any sense. That's the most valuable thing that we have together here is trust, intimacy, and this data set that we collaboratively are creating together. That is the most important, most valuable thing. Nobody should ever, ever, ever be able to get that data set. We should be able to leverage it ourselves. And then it looks like we've got some questions here. Yeah. And so should I go through these questions? Are they well ranked?
Maybe let me kind of group them and summarize them. I'll feed you a few of them.
Okay.
So one that's kind of come up a few times and also in the chat is, it goes back to what you were talking a bit about around explicit versus implicit data. There was a question of like, well, don't Facebook and every other ad network already do this stuff? And then there was another one that was a little more sort of niche and specific of like something like Rewind AI that, purports to record everything you're doing. Like, why not do that? Why do we have to do the work?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So before this, I spent 4 years at Google. And it just so happens to be when I joined Google, I was recruited into Google. And when I joined Google, the first thing that I was asked to work on was, this was during the time when Google really wanted Google Plus to succeed. Google felt that sort of Facebook was an existential threat in the way that it allowed targeting of ads and such. And so Google tried to sort of retrofit all of Google with this social, spine, backbone, as often they referred to it. And that's why they called it Google Plus. It was supposed to be all of Google, but better. What was better about it? That it sort of had this social awareness. And they were having trouble sort of getting people to add people to circles, to sort of friend people explicitly. And so I was put in charge of running these machine learning teams that were trying to calculate a ranked list of people you may know, another ranked list of people you may like, and also to influence the ranking of the Google Plus feed, like what prompts go in there. By utilizing all of these implicitly collected signals that Google has, all of this data that Google collects about our usage of the services. You would think that this would be pretty simple, and like Google should know who you know and should be able to create a list for you. But they were having a lot of trouble doing that. I did that for 2.5 years of my 4-year tenure there. About 9 months in, I finally realized what the problem was. The problem is that even if Google or anybody else could watch everything you've ever done from birth, every message you've ever sent, every search you've ever done, every video you've ever watched, every place you've ever gone, recorded every conversation you've ever had, that is still a tiny, tiny fraction of what is in your mind. Those are the things that you've done, not the things that you've thought and how you make decisions. So even if you could get that data, the signal there is extraordinarily limited. Think about that. This is a fact. The signal is extraordinarily limited. Next, the signal is extraordinarily ambiguous. All the things we do could mean many different things. I just searched for videos about, appendicitis. Does that mean I want to be a physician, or do I have a tummy ache? Stupid example, but again, an example of ambiguity that exists in implicitly collected signals. Next, if you use those implicitly collected signals to do anything, people get really creeped out. Feels really weird. All of a sudden, you sort of didn't tell something about yourself and it comes up with all these things. You're like, wow, that's kind of scary. You're like, spying on me? What? Nobody likes them. And kind of finally, the regulators are at the door. And whenever you get creepy, the regulators see there's an opportunity to get in the way and sort of break things for everyone. So implicit signal collection is extraordinarily limited in its scope, ambiguous, creepy, restricted. Explicit signal collection, which is what we do, gets rid of all of those problems. Um, I was talking to Bradley Horowitz, who was my direct supervisor at Google recently, and when I showed this to him, he says, "Oh, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of this Seinfeld episode." Um, I wasn't really sort of a big watcher of Seinfeld, but I've seen this episode now. It's an episode where Kramer pretends that he's the movie phone guy. For those of you that might know this episode, and I guess George calls him, and Kramer does his movie phone voice and says, "For this movie, press one. For this movie, press two." And then they sort of stumble around a little bit, and then finally, Kramer says, "Why don't you just tell me the name of the movie you want to watch?" This sort of does the same thing. It says, like, why futz around and trying to figure out by watching these implicit signals and guessing? Why not just ask people to tell you what it is and then disambiguate, really go into nuance of it, right? Because everything is in that nuance in the detail. Like, for example, if I got a prompt that says, you know, I know Java, computer, programming language, I would say, yes, I do. That's true. But there might be other prompts that say, I'm proficient at Java. And I'd be like, well, I'm no longer proficient at Java, right? And so do I know Java? Yes, I do. Am I proficient at Java? No, I'm not. Well, how proficient am I, or how not proficient? Like, so you can go into all kinds of real detail to be able to nuance people's states of mind, gaps in knowledge, aptitudes, deficiencies, color blindness, things that stress them out. This thing eventually, can connect to biometric devices. These sensors can be of all sort of different types of, multimodal. And so we should be able to tease all kinds of things out and have them disambiguated. Okay, so hopefully that like clears up the difference between implicit signals and explicit signals, which is what we're dealing with here.
There are a lot of questions about data storage, fair questions. What are our beliefs around that? How do we protect people? Everything people should be afraid of.
And maybe you kind of read the one that is most upvoted on that because I thought it was well written from Daria. Is really curious slash hopeful slash hungry. Good mix of adjectives for a statement of ethics in terms of how you will use our personal data and sharing, and what your long-term vision of UAI is in a way that supports, preserves, and also protects humanity, our planet, and our future.
Look, this is an important set of questions that we will all be discussing. So from now on, now that you're joining us in these conversations, we are certain that this is going to be extraordinarily disruptive, transformational, both in positive ways and negative ways. That it's going to be extraordinarily important, to move with caution and respect for what we're sort of playing around with. There are certainly best practices in data security and privacy that we are implementing and will continue to implement. There are, a number of approaches with, differential privacy or synthetic data, for example, that allows us to be able to leverage data, but have it be truly anonymized in such a way that it can't be sort of reconstructed and connected to an individual. There's sort of various siloing and separation of identity from data. There's encryption. There's like a lot of things that are in play to deal with sort of potential vulnerabilities of all of this. But we certainly don't know what we don't know yet. From this vantage point, and as we continue to innovate and explore all of this together, these things will be clear. The one thing, we commit to you and obviously to everyone is that we will be transparent. We think this is critically important. Again, I have 5 kids. I want their world to be as good and hopefully better than our world here. Yeah, these are extraordinarily important and multidimensional questions.
Another good one in here, this thing would stop shifting around, is, and this touches a bit on the point you were making about prompt generating data and pixels in an image rather than explicit answers. So someone asked, how do you know people aren't lying? And someone also followed up like, well, people lie to themselves the most. Like, do we really know ourselves? So how do you get kind of accuracy?
Yeah,
I
think
would
that's
not even be able to articulate and express.
I think that's a really important question. We're all people, right? And we can look at our own behavior, and periodically, again, we might not admit it to other people sometimes, but we know that there are times that we're like, hey, I kind of think I'm this way, but it seems like I'm probably this way. And in fact, our friends and family oftentimes sort of know us better than we know ourselves, because they can see that sort of the way we think we are is not exactly the way that we are. And so this is just a human condition. This is a fact. I believe by utilizing these prompts, and again, sort of this continuous engagement with these, and as we get better at generating these prompts, today, the prompts you're going to play around with are, think of them as like super early YouTube videos. For those of you that were around during the early days of YouTube, those videos were nothing like the videos we see now. They were radically different. They were jank compared to this. That's how these prompts are. They're jank. They are dumb. Everybody's getting the same set of prompts in onboarding, and then they sort of get randomized just out of a corpus of prompts that we have. There's no intelligence behind them. But as we move forward, there will be intelligence behind them. And we will not be creating these prompts manually. They'll be created programmatically. And the systems, I'm certain, will be extraordinarily good at being able to sort of ask the same question from many different angles, to be able to truly make sure that this thing that you are sort of articulating to it is accurate, to see it from these different, vantage points, and this sort of triangulation of sorts of this should be able to allow, again, the system to detect whether you might be like, I don't think anybody's like lying intentionally to this. If they're lying to their AI, like, why waste your time? I mean, you're just like fooling around, I guess, but like there's no value for you to lie to your AI. But you might not sort of be accurate in who you really are because you kind of don't know it. And this thing should be able to tease that out of you. And because it's with you all the time, like if you go to a therapist, and some people, love therapy and go to therapists, spend a lot of time there. A great therapist over a long period of time can tease these things out of you. But here, this therapist is sort of like always around you. Like you hopefully will reach for it when you're bored. This should feel good. This shouldn't feel like work for you to be able to engage with this. It should feel pleasant. This should give you a bunch of insights. Like it should be your, best friend. I'm not sure you'll call it that. Who knows? I don't know. But it should be able to help you figure out the real you, where you might be misaligned with the real you, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your knowledge gaps are, and be able to make you better. It will augment your weaknesses. It will amplify your strengths, and hopefully help you live a better life.
Nice. So we are at time. I think we can take a few more questions, but if anyone does need to jump off, you will be receiving an email within the next half hour or so that will include a link to be able to create your account and play around, as well as a link to join us on Discord, which I believe has been shared in the chat as well. You want to do a few more questions to me?
Yeah, and we'll also make this webinar available again for you to watch again if you want to, or share with friends. So this will be available as well.
Cool. Here's another one that's kind of similar-ish. My biggest fear hearing this, and I think this is when you were talking about kind of being able to compare your mental models with other people and be connected with other people, discover other people. My biggest fear hearing this is that it would unintentionally deepen the silos as we further separate and deepen into respective tribes. So kind of like, is this just creating an echo chamber? Because it's going to be like, you both share all these things, congrats to your friends. Like, you know, most of our friends are not the people that we have the most things in common with. So how do we think about, you know, the role of data and pulling things out and recommendations in ways that go beyond just kind of, you know, linear correlation?
Yeah, look, it's a profound question. I won't claim to know the answer.
Immortality, so we can get more profound after this.
Yeah, I won't claim to to know the answer to that, but I'm a human. I'm 53 years old. Like I said, I've got 5 kids. I'm very social myself. I believe that humans are naturally good, that we like other people. We want to like other people. We want to understand other people. We want to connect with them. We want to be understood. While we do end up in a bunch of echo chambers using current technologies, because again, they're sort of optimized for engagement, and because of that, you start to get these kinds of clusters. That is not our state that we desire. That we want to learn new things, we want to grow, we want to do all of that. And so my gut feel, that's all I can at this moment, I think, claim. My gut feel is that this is the solution to that, rather than something that sort of exacerbates that. That would not make sense to me, because once you can compare yourself to other people and again, find the places that where you're in common, and realize that the things that you don't have in common, where you disagree, are actually a limited set. You could actually spend your time, instead of sort of like vilifying other people and saying, well, you're not part of the tribe, by saying, okay, well, why do you believe this? And you can talk about the things that are relevant, knowing that you're pretty much the same except for this thing. And I think, like, once that's the case, then people will be able to understand each other in much better ways, especially again with the thing that can show you like where you're misaligned. You might be saying different words, pointing at the same thing and thinking that you're disagreeing, but you're actually not disagreeing, you're just miscommunicating. And I see this happening in my own life all the time, just this miscommunication with people. And I think this will help dramatically. We will all see together. Again, thanks for joining us in this. This thing is not ready to be unleashed on the world. You guys are coming in, and you're going to help us figure these things out. And sorry, immortality, is that what's next?
We can go there. Yeah.
Okay.
The craziest thought, this is from Nicole. The craziest thought is that our UAI exists beyond our deaths, family members accessing us as we leave this earth. What happens with each of our UAIs when we pass on?
It's an interesting question. We have thought about it. Sean actually earlier this morning sent me a screenshot of my calendar for Saturday, and on it it says I forget, like, fix the deck and immortality, and Sean has got a party going on at his place in New York. So that was the juxtaposition of our
You've got record podcast Immortality at 2:30, and then you can come to my masquerade at 7 o'clock. Saturday at UAI.
So, yeah, so I'm gonna see if Saturday I can write some things about immortality. There are a bunch of folks in the world, Ray Kurzweil is one of them, who have been thinking about this idea of being able to sort of create your digital self, and when your biological self is gone, your digital self is sort of remains and is available either for you to somehow live digitally, which seems kind of odd, in my opinion, or less odd for your friends and family members to be able to sort of engage with the model of you and in a sense, sort of feel like they are still connected to you. I'll tell you, it's not something that I personally seek. But I think that what we're building here does specifically is the closest thing to be able to accomplish that, to be able to enumerate oneself and make that immortal, because it is. I mean, as long as the internet exists and the servers keep running, and I think that's really interesting. And so I plan to on Saturday, if I get the time, to write some things about that. And again, we can discuss all of this. This is a great thing for discussion in Discord. Guys, look, all of this is the beginnings of this profound new idea of what would happen if we all digitized our minds. There are going to be countless dimensions of discussion and fascination and things that will feel, I think, terrifying. Like we're creating Skynet, from the Terminator movies. All of those are the right thoughts. We're playing with fire. We know that. We're inviting you to come play with fire with us. We may get burned. Hopefully not too bad. and so please come help us stay safe, and maybe we engage with all these questions there.
That seems like a good place to end it, aside from someone who wants to know if alpha testers will be invited to invest in YouAi. So if you want to send us gift baskets or
Meat and cheese.
we'll take gift cards.
For those that might be investors, let me clarify who we are and what we're doing here. So this is being seeded by our company GoMeta, by investors in GoMeta, which the company owns Koji. Our plan is to go raise a new round for this new company starting now. If you would like to talk about that, please feel free and reach out to me. I'm just Dimitri at uai.ai. We think that leaving room for angels in a venture round is important. We've done that before, and so I think the answer is yes. That there more than likely will be room for small checks as we sort of put the syndicate together for this round.
Cool. I think that's probably a good place to end it. There's still a bunch of really good questions in here, but a lot of them are pretty kind of specific, so might be better off done in Discord, or also feel free to email us, reach out to us on LinkedIn. That, like, we're happy to keep going, and
the other thing we will be doing.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Sean. The other thing we'll be doing is, actually earlier this morning we talked about this. We will be hosting. We'll see. It might even be daily. I think I'm calling them like office hours, where we will just be on a Zoom, probably for half an hour to an hour, and we'll just post that link, and you can just join and just talk to us live like this. And it'll be opened up with video and audio, and like there's so many things to talk about. There are so many ideas with what we can do with this. We really not just want, we need your creativity and your input and your thinking. We will utilize you. Like we will marshal your resources. We will ask you for help. We will ask you to, if you ask a question, we might say, hey, do you mind starting a document so that we can sort of go through and think about that, and let's schedule a meeting to talk about that. So, you guys are, in a sense, by participating in this alpha, subjecting yourselves to potentially being leveraged as co-conspirators in this endeavor that we've gotten you guys into, and I promise to make it exciting.
Cool. I think we can wrap it up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's going to get a link soon. Now.
We'll get a link as soon as I parse this CSV from Zoom and
Amazing.
get them out there. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Discord link is in chat, so if you that'll be in the email as well. But if you want to get in there fast, do that. There may also be the case where if you registered for the waitlist with a different email than you used to register for this Zoom, you might not get the invitation email sent correctly. So if you don't get something within an hour, but you were here, feel free to just, annoy us on Discord and we will make sure that you get in.
Mhm. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. I'm super excited to chat with everybody on Discord. And in fact, I'm going to grab some dinner, and afterwards I'm going to be in there, and I'll see you guys there. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.